Hey guys, so I'm finally ending Horror Month of 2022 with a review of the most recent reboot of Hellraiser. Now, Horror Month is something I do every October, but I acknowledge that this year Horror Month extended all the way out into the beginning of December. Sorry about that, but sometimes real life gets in the way of these videos. Now, this review was actually recorded in October, I just didn't get a chance to edit it until now, and also I wanted to get the Nightmare on Elm Street reviews out of the way before I got onto this one. Now, I already reviewed the first 9 Hellraiser movies all the way back in 2013 for Horror Month Season 3. Then I reviewed Hellraiser Judgment in 2018, and then in 2019, me and my friend Bill Burns did a retrospective on the Hellraiser franchise, where we discussed every film in the series that was made at that point. Now, this is the 11th film in the Hellraiser franchise, acting as a reboot of the series. Now, this franchise started in 1987 with the cult classic Hellraiser, which was written and directed by Clive Barker and based on Barker's 1986 novel, The Hellbound Heart. Now, even though Hellraiser was made as a standalone film, it did spawn an ongoing series of sequels, most of which Clive Barker had nothing to do with. You had Hellbound Hellraiser 2 in 1988, which in my opinion is the only one of the sequels that actually comes close to matching the tone and themes of the original. After Hellraiser 2, the series really went downhill. You had Hellraiser 3 in 1992, Hellraiser Bloodline in 1996, Hellraiser Inferno in 2000, Hellraiser Hellseeker in 2002, Hellraiser Deader, and Hellraiser Hellworld, which both came out in 2005. Then you had Hellraiser Revelations in 2011, and Hellraiser Judgment in 2018. And the character of Pinhead from these movies, despite being more of a minor character in the first 2 movies, would eventually become the main antagonist of the series and a horror movie icon. The franchise would also spawn multiple comic book spin-offs, and the Cenobites would actually either be mentioned or appear in some of Clive Barker's other stories. They were mentioned in his fantasy novel Weave World, and they also appeared most notably in his 2015 novel, The Scarlet Gospels. Now, this Hellraiser movie came out this year, 2022, and was released straight to Hulu. Now, this movie was directed by David Bruckner, who prior to this directed movies like The Signal, The Ritual, and The Night House. And the movie was co-written by David S. Goyer, who also wrote movies like Demonic Toys, The Crow City of Angels. He wrote all 3 Blade movies. He also co-wrote movies like Dark City, and he co-wrote all 3 of the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. He also wrote Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. The movie was also co-written by Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski. Now, this is a reboot, so technically it's not in continuity with any of the previous films. However, if you wanted to, you could almost call this a direct sequel to the first 2 Hellraiser movies, just ignoring all the sequels that came in between, because Pinhead actually did die at the end of Hellraiser 2. He became human again and then was killed, and presumably his soul was freed from hell, or whatever dimension the Cenobites are from. So if you wanted to, you could assume that Pinhead in this movie is just another human that was turned by Leviathan. Or again, you could just look at it as a pure reboot. Now for this review, I was joined by some special guests. Who are you again?
We are C and J.
Yeah, we're CJ. CJ from Grand Theft Auto.
Okay.
And, shit.
Grand Theft Auto Long Island Unit.
Yeah, unit. Grand Theft Auto Long Island Unit.
Alright.
Yes, so I'm C, and that new movie was really interesting. I noticed aesthetics a lot. So I loved Pinhead, or the High Priest's voice, or the Hell Priest, whatever their name is in the credits. Their voice was amazing, their look was really good, the androgyny fit the character. Like Jay over here is going to probably mention at one point, which is a good point, it focused a lot on the pain, and maybe not so much in the pleasure sense of It had sexual scenes, sure, but there was no blend, I don't believe, between pain and pleasure.
It's completely disjointed.
Yeah. Well, you know, I hate to say it, most of the Hellraiser movies after part 2 kind of missed that point entirely.
Yeah, probably just for the shock value, like Saw, like it became about the traps after a while, and the...
Yeah.
Because that concept of pain and pleasure overlapping is so interesting, and I wish they would do something different.
To be completely fair, even in the original Hellraiser, I don't think that was completely clear that there was also pleasure mixed in. In the book, it's clear that this is sort of a perfect amalgamation of pain and pleasure, but...
They visually did it. Like, as in, like how they match scenes and imagery in it. It was more seductive like that.
Yeah.
So, at least in the first one, yeah.
Yes, the hand with the pain and the lovemaking with the cuts. That was pretty innovative for the 80s. I don't think I've ever seen a film like...
Yeah.
Maybe it was jarring, maybe it was campy, but it got the point across, like, oh, there's a blend here. But with this film, definitely for a newer audience, maybe for one that hadn't seen Hellraiser before, and that's fine.
Do you think it was
There were high stakes.
A sequel or a reboot?
Ooh.
Technically, it's a reboot because, like, it doesn't appear to be in continuity with the first 2 films. At the same time, they bring up Leviathan and all that, but at the same time, this is clearly a different version of the Pinhead character, so...
Yeah, it's definitely a good standalone film.
Yeah.
Like, baby's first Hellraiser was what I called it. Like, you could watch it going into it blind, or you could be like all 3 of us and have knowledge of it, and... I think you could see it either way. Continuation, reboot, or just first of its kind if you wanted to. If you never heard of Hellraiser before, that would be an interesting introduction.
Yeah, I guess so, but I would still show somebody the original Hellraiser.
Absolutely. Yeah, after seeing the first one, that's what you want to compare it to, but it was cool in its own right.
Now, what the plot of Hellraiser 2022 is we follow a recovering addict named Riley who's convinced by her boyfriend to join him in robbing this warehouse, and they end up finding this mysterious puzzle box that belonged to an eccentric millionaire who just disappeared. Little does Riley know that this box can actually open the gateway to another dimension, which may or may not be heaven or hell, or just some realm beyond human understanding. And this box can summon these interdimensional demons known as the Cenobites. Eventually, Riley's brother cuts himself on the box and is taken by the Cenobites. So throughout the film, Riley and her boyfriend and her brother's boyfriend, along with some of their friends, try to figure out what this box is and figure out some way to save her brother. That's just the basic outline of the plot, but trust me, there's a lot more to the story than just that. I will say this, I loved that they brought Leviathan back, because I always thought that was a cool concept from Hellraiser 2. That sadly the sequels that followed never really followed up on the whole Leviathan concept.
Really?
Like, I actually saw Hellraiser 2 in the theaters a few months ago, and as I was watching it, I'd seen it before, obviously, but rewatching it, I was like, you know, this is actually a pretty cool movie, and had the rest of the franchise really followed after this, it could have been one of the best horror franchises out there. Instead, you have just the first 2 movies, which are really good, and then after that, the franchise is very hit or miss.
Oh, man. And you and Jay have seen the second one. I have not. I've only seen the first half, so I didn't know about the Leviathan.
Yeah.
Only seen the first one. This was a good introduction for me to know about the Leviathan. I thought that was pretty cool. Especially the ending. No spoilers for this one, but...
No spoilers?
I mean, we could talk about it. Spoilers? Yeah, I guess we'll have to.
Okay, so the movie ends with the villain, Roland, what the hell is, his...
Blunt.
Or something. Yeah, Roland Blunt.
Roland,
Void. It sounds like Void. Voight.
Yes,
Yep.
It ends with he makes a deal with Pinhead. Because in the movie, you find out the box has different configurations, and the final one is the Leviathan configuration, which supposedly is ultimate power. And the movie essentially ends with Voight, where he becomes one with this godlike being called Leviathan.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly how he would have wanted it.
Sure, he becomes. We looked up the wiki, and I thought he became God. We can interpret it however we want, but the wiki, according to someone's interpretation, said he became a Cenobite.
Yeah,
it's right, a Cenobite.
Cenobite.
In the book, I always thought it was X, Xeno.
No.
Okay.
You're thinking of xenomorphs.
That's what I'm
from
thinking.
Alien.
Yes. Cenobites. Or Cenobites. So according to the wiki, he became a Cenobite. Either interpretation is cool. It was a very mutilated version of God, which is, that's where I think the pain and pleasure aspect came through. Because he had the ultimate power. That's where I think if they had to pressure that, what's the word? If they had to stress that point, that last scene.
Yeah.
I mean,
really
I guess you
home.
can play with it because she was like, you have to keep pushing past thresholds, and the idea is that they were going to show people new forms of like feeling and sensation. So that's like what the whole torturing thing is like. Oh, you just press over, and then you get to the next level of it. Like it's a new kind. So it's like it's probably playing with that. Like this isn't a realm of good or evil. It's just a realm of sensation, which is probably why it said sensation instead of pleasure.
Yeah, that's good noticing that. That was a good touch. Yeah. They said, Pinhead said pleasure like once. Because what they noticed when one of the Cenobites with the hood was sticking the pins into the girl's throat, I guess it was, like she was silencing her, there was no pleasure there. It was sensation.
Pain and pleasure, it's a point of view thing.
It's true. It's true. It seems like visually they didn't make her obviously like, oh God, like, wait, don't, she said that. She actually was like, oh God, please. And then just needles in the throat.
Yeah, I mean, did it say something about like wanting like new like music or sounds or something like that?
Yes.
So it gave her a new sound.
Oh, so it was very on the nose. It was like what I was saying during the movie, like a very mixed up monkey's paw kind of, oh, we're going to translate this literally for you. We're not going to give you any room for happiness here. It's going to be, you new sensation for sound. Here you go.
Yeah.
Now,
needle in the throat.
Being that you've only seen parts of the second Hellraiser movie,
yes. Yeah.
What do you think Leviathan is? Because they never really explain in either this or the second Hellraiser movie what it is. Like, and I think it's up to interpretation. You could interpret Leviathan as the devil if you want to interpret a sort of Judeo-Christian mythology here.
Sure.
Maybe it's a fallen angel, or maybe it's God, because who's to say what God is actually like? And that's something I've always liked about the first two Hellraiser films is it's left completely up to us what's really going on.
Sure.
Are we really dealing with traditional Judeo-Christian hell? Is this just another dimension that humans are interpreting as hell? Or is this heaven? Who's to say that heaven doesn't suck,
Yeah, those are really good questions. And what you just asked me, it's like, again, we were, in order for most of us to speak throughout to pay attention to the movie, we do commentary. So I was like shouting throughout the movie, oh God, is it aliens? Did they really do this with aliens? So I interpreted that as, it could be God. It could be just like some and an alien in its sense is like a strange entity. You don't know what it is, or at least it's like it doesn't belong here is the main premise. So I didn't interpret it as God. I just saw it as something foreign. But God would be a cool... After overanalyzing like the devil and God, it wigs me out too much sometimes because I'm like, what do I want to believe in? What is true? I don't know. But that felt comforting to just say, it's aliens.
Well, I mean, look at it this way. If we think of heaven and hell as other dimensions, then technically aren't angels and demons aliens if we really think of heaven and hell as other planes of existence?
They're aliens to us. Yeah, if we want to see this realm as like the living world and then there's a portal to this, that, and the other, they would be alien to our biology and stuff. Like the Cenobites were alien to everything we know of being human. Like they're pleasureless, they're sexless, they're genderless, like they're... Yeah, which is cool. And I love that all I heard about the new movie was that they cast a transgender woman.
Which I'm all for, because in the original novel, Pinhead is more androgynous in the original novel. Yeah,
their voice was perfect. And I'm going to use they for this iteration of Pinhead because very androgynous. They did a great job with the makeup. The voice even had like glimpses of like more hypermasculine, hyperfeminine or whatever. But it was a cool overlap. More sadistic, but like... No, actually trying to remember the old Pinhead now. He seemed more sadistic. This one just seemed like very, like, too logical. Like, we're going to interpret this logically without any humanity, which made them pretty threatening. Did you have any thoughts on the hell or the final Leviathan going back to the Because that was a really cool concept, like the final form.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
It is. Yeah, that's all that needs to be said sometimes.
Well, what did we think of the characters in the movie?
Good
like the main
question.
character.
I mean, I felt like that guy, the boyfriend, was just a complete throwaway fucking NPC until, like, at the end, they're like, oh, he's the guy. And then it's like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't see that coming because I wrote him off for being, like, lackluster.
Okay, lackluster. Well, that's good. I wonder if that was a deliberate choice or... Because I genuinely didn't see that coming either.
Yeah.
So, did they write him to be lackluster? Was he really that personality-less? I don't know. I guess I gotta re-examine personal biases, because that did take me out of left field. I'm like, why are you working for Mr. Gear Chest over here? Why was he working for...
Money.
Voight. Money?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the art
He was
paintings.
paying
Yes,
him,
yes,
but
yes.
I think he also, Voight might have been promising him certain, like, hey, I have access to these supernatural, maybe even divine powers. Mm-hmm. Maybe I could make you a god. Like, I almost get a sense that maybe Voight was promising things like that, too.
Right.
I mean, like, I did question, like, why at first he was so weird about the box. And
Oh, yeah.
it's like, there's nothing in this has happened in this movie that would justify any of you motherfuckers being scared of this thing. and he was all wigged out about it. So I guess him knowing about it, that kind of explains. But then the brother's boyfriend, like, why would he be scared of it? Does that mean he was also in on it? Did he kind of survive?
The boyfriend's brother, yeah, was super like, what, after the boyfriend disappears.
Yeah, dude fucking bugged out real hard, unless he's just overacting and
You made a good point, like, what reason do they have to be scared of a box? And at the same time, it's another thing that's alien. It's just like a weird thing that showed up, like, what does that have to do with anything? It's a fucking box.
Yeah.
But we joked around we could replace that box with anything, like, oh, it's a grape, oh, it's a Rubik's Cube. But... the characters were cool. I thought that dialogue between Riley and her brother was like, you know, it was over the top because of the stakes. And so they gave her personality, you know?
Yeah.
That was like, okay, sympathetic main character, an addict. I wonder why she got it, but they opened the box. So it's cool to see someone not seeking material gain get it. Whereas Frank, in the first one, he was trying to push the boundaries, so that was his burden to bear.
I think he was, like, seeking ultimate pleasure.
Yes.
It's funny that they made the main character an addict in this, because I always looked at Frank in the original film and in the novel as being an addict for pleasure. Like, the character of Frank in the original film is just so desensitized that he's constantly seeking a new sensation, and he's desperate to, like, find something new, and, of course, the Cenobites give him something new in that original film.
Right, and he drags down his old lover with him, and, I forget why she's just so wrapped up with it. I guess she remembers the pleasure she had with Frank, and Frank is this disgusting flesh dude, guilting her into it, like, we could do this again, just, feed me, Seymour, you know, but, yeah, I mean, it's like, characters were good in this movie.
It might just, like, also be the literal transgression of things. Like, instead of, like, of morals, it's, like, the literal transgression of flesh. Right? So it's, like, if you think, because fucking Clive is influenced by Bataille, and if, like, you're looking at, like, Bataille shit, you have to think of, like, Freud and stuff, right? So it's, like, the, you know, pleasure in Freud shit was actually the end of sensation.
The pleasure in Freud's?
Yeah, like, so what is actually pleasurable is actually when sensation is done. Like, and displeasure is actually the whole fucking thing, the whole build up, like, the act, all sensation, that's displeasure.
Interesting.
And pleasure is when it's over, the release. So, you know,
the afterglow.
The whole thing, exactly, right? So, like, they're seeking this pleasure, they're building up, right? They're going through all this experience in life, and then they finally get the fucking hooks, right? Which bleeds them out. It releases them. It lets them literally out of their bodies, right? Ugh. So, like, in the whole thing, for people actually to get to heaven, you need to pass through death. Right? So, and that's also, like, a transgression thing. Like, you're passing through this whole realm thing. So, it's kind of like they need to end the, you know, to you peak, you get to the summit of absolute sensation and pleasure, and then to get out of your body, which would be the next step, like you gotta fucking get mutilated and and like literally bled out and let to flow.
Interesting. And is that what transgression is?
I
Just
mean,
for
in
the
a
folks
weird
at home
fucking
and me.
bataille over sense, like over idea for bataille, like it's like he's being metaphorical or using
Okay.
parody, but also like you see it as like a literal thing in
Right, because
movie form.
Okay, because trying to think of the word, breaking it down, transgression, like transforming into something else. Transgressing sounds like backwards, but transgression sounds like a coming into something else.
Yeah, it's like-
is that what he means by it?
Bataille?
Mm-hmm. Or in this case?
I would say it's like a going from one thing to the other.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So in a way, a transformation, but there is like a break there, like a passage type thing, but also like a transformation in it. Right?
Well said. What do you think about the gore?
Oh, it's good. It's good. My biggest issue with this movie, and you were pointing this out when we
Yeah.
were watching it, is the fucking lighting in this is atrocious. But I almost feel that's a problem with a lot of modern movies, especially horror movies, is directors don't know how to light shit anymore, it seems like.
Or maybe they're right. I would agree with that. Or maybe they're afraid to because of any potential mistakes or CGI. But I want to see it. They used rubbery prosthetics back then. Do you see the '90s Ninja Turtles doing shitty lighting? No, they had the creepiest faces. Like, show me the goods, please.
You open the puzzle box and the Ninja Turtles.
Cowabunga! What's your greatest sin, dude? Like, that's brilliant. Yeah, it was just frustrating because on one hand I want to see, and then on the other hand it adds to the atmosphere, and on the other hand, an era we all grew up in was like VHS and things. You pointed it out to me, Jay. You have let me know that the clarity sometimes when we were watching VHS growing up didn't hurt it. It added to it because you couldn't see. But it's just there's noises and there's sounds and then Cenobites are moving. It's like, please, a crumb of lighting, please. I just want to see what you've done. I want to see the budget.
Yeah.
So I get you. That was the main issue.
I also think something I love about the original Hellraiser and the novel The Hellbound Heart, and this is a thing I love about Clive Barker's work in general, is I feel there's a real philosophy to Barker's storytelling. Like, it's more than just horror. There's like something he's trying to say about the human condition in a lot of his stories. Yeah. And a lot of his stories get into sexual transgression and all that. And I didn't really get that in this movie. Like, I didn't feel this movie really... It's not the Hellraiser... If I were doing my own new adaptation of the Hellbound Heart...
It wouldn't be this.
It would be a lot. Actually, the Hellraiser movie that I would make would be a hard X, if we're being honest.
I get you. This was a good interpretation, like, a good direction on its own. But, right, if Clive has... We know Clive, you guys have read the book, I've read part of it, and I've seen the first one, you guys have seen most of them. Like, knowing his lore and knowing, like, what kind of person he was, you know, wasn't he gay?
Yeah,
and he
was gay, but he also was a prostitute.
Really? He was a sex worker?
Yeah.
And, like, putting his experiences into his art, as most artists do, it's like, there was a lot, like you said, to possibly explore and unpack there, and this was a cool thing on its own, but... It would be cool if more of his ideas were utilized. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I do think this is probably the best Hellraiser movie since the second one, if we're being honest, because... once again, like, I adore the first two Hellraiser movies, but after that... Was it really? What were they like since I haven't seen them?
Basically, they turned Pinhead in... They were typical slasher films. They made Pinhead a slasher. And Pinhead's not even the main villain in the first two movies.
Right.
And this Pinhead is a little more centric to the story than they were in the first two films. At the same time, even in this one, the character of Roland is technically the villain of this one. In the first two movies and in this one, the Cenobites are more amoral, like they're almost beyond good and evil.
Yes, and that's what Berserk got super inspired by. So if you like the Hellbound Heart and this Cenobites, I implore you to get it, like, watch the Berserk movies. That was how I started, and it got me into, like, a good summary of their most infamous arc. Some of the villains, spoiler, are inspired by the Cenobites. They're immoral. They're, like, gods of a hell, because it's, like, a hell on earth for humans, but they are very, like, this is the way it is. It's the law of causality or whatever. They look like the Cenobites. They're very inspired by it. There's, like, 3 guys and 1 girl, and they're all like, oh, we're choosing the next one. Like, who's it gonna be? And so, yeah, I just went off on Berserk there.
Oh, that's all right.
Berserk's great. But have you heard the term Flanderization?
Mm-mm.
Ned Flanders, character in Simpsons, supposedly, haven't watched much of The Simpsons, over time during the seasons, he just became more of a caricature of himself, and so now Flanderization is a term used for anyone that becomes, like, any fictional or real person that becomes, like, a gross, mainly fictional, a gross representation of themselves. So if you're saying Pinhead, like, we got glimpses of him in the first one, he was really cool and drew you in, now he's, like, being overused because that's what you want to see, it comes off and rings really hollow, so I don't think I'd want to see those from what you're saying.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. The fourth one is interesting. That's the one where they go to space.
No! Why do they always go to space? Jason X!
Yeah,
Jason
go to space.
X.
Leprechaun went to space.
That's... because the novelty wears off as soon as you say the title. It's a stoner idea. It's like, who wants to put this budget into this idea?
First of all, I really want to see Halloween go to space. At this point, they should.
That's going to be the end of the new movie when you go see it.
Yes. Halloween X, the night he went to space. Any other thoughts? Oh, the sex scenes were a bit much. There was just one, but I was like, enough.
I didn't mind it.
It was alright. It set it up.
There was like 3.
There were 3?
Remember the first one where everybody heard them, and then the second one after her brother died, and she's like, give me some sex, my bro died.
Oh, that's right.
Also,
that's right. And she's like, I see my bro.
And also, in all seriousness, if you read any of Clive Barker's stories, and I know he didn't actually write this one, but if you read anything by Barker, there's a lot of sex in his shit.
Yeah, but in this one, I felt like, other than just showing the opposite of extreme gore and extreme sex, I guess, there didn't need to be. Maybe the first scene where they're just like,
alright,
grooving, and then everyone hears it, but...
Yeah, but I mean, the Hellraiser, it's already a very sexual story, so it didn't really...
Fair
but
enough.
I get your
That's
point
true.
in the sense that in this one, the sex doesn't really contribute anything to the, you know...
Yes, that's what I was trying to get across.
It was there just because it's like, oh yeah, Hellraiser sex. Let's put it in here
Yes.
because we need it.
Extreme pain, extreme pleasure. They were showing it in a way that felt disconnected to me, personally, but yeah. Oh, Hellraiser equals sex. Any other thoughts?
No, I thought it was a decent reboot.
It felt rushed for a long-ass movie.
Yeah, that's
It was
actually...
2 hours,
That is
yes.
another criticism,
Yeah.
is I don't think it needed to be 2 hours, if we're being honest.
Sure. Yeah, I remember the highlights, but you probably could have trimmed that down a lot. Like, there was the part in the woods, and...
Yeah, and there's some movies that absolutely earn their lengths, but this one, I'm like, it did not need to be 2 hours. You could have trimmed a half hour out of this, if we're being honest.
Right. It showed the people dying, and it showed them the depth of... And again, would have loved to see the effects when reality was warping, and they were going into the Hellverse, or wherever they are, but... Yeah.
I'll say this, though, I did like... To go back to the characters, I thought the characterization was really good. Especially in the first half, like, getting to know Riley and her brother, like, their whole relationship, it felt very real. It felt very genuine.
I think they did do a good job with that, because it's
Agreed.
like, it actually felt like there was stakes there, like when she took the pills. You know?
Yes, and
So-
when she started hallucinating, nobody believed her. I was changing shape, I swear, and so you were anchored in it, so I'm glad you guys thought that it was good. I agree. It actually did get me invested, and normally, it sounds biased, but newer protagonists are written very, like, they're gonna die, or throwaway, and this one felt like, there was effort. Good movie, 10 out of 10. No, it was...
Yeah, I don't do ratings, but...
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it was a perfect film, but
Nah.
it was a solid movie, I think.
Pinhead's dialogue, last thing, amazing. I was like, ooh, true to the character, spicy, morally ambiguous. Well, no, it was not ambiguous, just too logical. It was great. Pop off, Pinhead.
Now, Jason, what did you think? You hated it, didn't you?
I didn't hate it.
Fessa.
But I was like, okay.
You were wary because you only saw the first 10 minutes before you watched it with us.
Yeah.
So what were your thoughts then?
I think at that point I was like, okay. Like, I don't know if I believed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So you think this stuff is real?
Yeah, it is. I believe in monastic horny phantoms. And
Ugh, phantoms, let alone horny ones?
Yeah.
What are you trying to invite into this house?
Monastic horny phantoms.
Thank you. My basement isn't creepy enough.
So that was our rather rambling review of Hellraiser 2022.
That's the way we do it.
See you later.